Well, I'm back to review step number 50 of the 67 steps by Tai Lopez. I've been super busy the past few weeks, so haven't been able to do one of these reviews, but I'm determined to see this through, all 67 of these, no matter what it takes. So I'm back into the swing of things, but this is review of step number 50, and it was called Mastering the Wrong Things and Blue Eyeshadow Numb-nuts. The how and why of self-reliance. And certainly in the current world we're in, it's necessary to have self-reliance. But Tai and his business partner have different tendencies when it comes to delegation. Tai leans more towards the total self-reliance extreme, thinking if you want to get something done, you need to do it yourself. His business partner is on the other end of the spectrum that leads more towards delegation. He says you can only scale your company up if you outsource. And being just one of these extremes or just the other is going to lead to destructive tendencies. So, if you're too self-reliant and you want to do everything yourself, the problem is there's only so many hours in the day. If you lean towards early delegation, you're probably going to be hiring someone that isn't experienced enough to perform the task you're hiring them to do. So Tai suggests even more important than self-reliance is mastery. He says you must master yourself, you must master your mind, you must master your environment. Certainly one of the things that has allowed us humans to run the world is our ability to master our environment. We've certainly been able to minimize the risk of disease transfers. It's obviously statistically much safer for a woman to give childbirth now than it was hundreds of years ago. We've also been able to control our environment to the degree of our housing, It's certainly much safer to live in your house where you can control all the conditions rather than if you were to live outside. So, Tai says, you must either be a master or you must delegate to masters. And he says, well, how do you become a master? Well, according to Malcolm Gladwell in his book about achieving mastery, it's explained that it takes about 10,000 hours of specific practice to achieve mastery in any field. But Tai says, to become a master, you first need to use the law of the inverse. Figure out how not to become a master and then do the opposite. And he says the first thing to consider is you want to make sure you don't master the wrong thing. And Joel Salatin says the greatest shame is to getting to the end of your life and realize you mastered the wrong thing. And this is a lot more common for adults than you may think so. By the time you're in your 30s or 40s, you've mastered something, even if it's something you hate. You may have mastered something as seemingly insignificant as flipping burgers, but if you've been doing it for a long time, you've probably achieved mastery. You're probably pretty good at it. And Tai says, in health, wealth, love, and happiness, you have to master the right things. He gives an example of, in your health, the first pillar, the most important pillar, a good thing to focus on to master is your body mass index, the ratio of your height to weight. And you should be somewhere in between 18 and 24. That's a good thing to master in the health pillar. An example of someone that mastered the wrong thing in the health pillar would be Michael Jackson. He certainly mastered his ability to be an entertainer and a musician, but as far as his health goes, he mastered the wrong thing, and that was getting plastic surgery because he looked fine. He didn't need plastic surgery, but he went on and got it anyway. What he should have mastered was curing his insomnia and killing the demons that were preventing him from sleeping and made it necessary for him to be put under anesthesia just to sleep. In wealth, Tai gives the example of his stepfather, who was a very tall, outgoing guy, but mastered the wrong thing in his profession because despite him being so outgoing and a social person, he took a job at the post office in a cubicle by himself and was miserable for most of his life. And for love, Tai gives the example of mastering the wrong thing would be marrying the wrong person, dating the wrong person, having a kid with the wrong person. He gives a lesson that kind of is outside of this but works really well about, in the 12 Foundations, he has a lesson called self-selection bias, and he was explaining how a lot of people just get into a relationship randomly, but his whole premise behind this self-selection bias is you should first figure out the criteria of the person you want to date and then go to where those people are. So Tai gave the example of his friend that really likes Latina women. So Tai suggested to him, well, you should go salsa dancing, or you should go to the Spanish market, because there's obviously going to be a much more likelihood of those type of women that you're interested in being there. And, you know, he has this quote by Friedrich Nietzsche that says, most people are obstinate about the path once it's taken, few people about the destination. In other words, he says, be stubborn about achieving your goal, but flexible how you get there. You know, Tai gives the example of some engineers that were flying in a plane in the jungle and crashed their plane into the jungle and made a plan on how to get out of the jungle and get to a nearby village that they knew was around. They got their machetes, the engineer showed them how to hack their way at a 45-degree angle to get to the village. But a wiser philosopher climbed up to one of the trees and looked out over and said, hey guys, you're cutting in the wrong direction. The town isn't that way, the village is that way. So they, had it not been for him, they would have mastered the wrong thing. They could have hacked all day and gone nowhere. And, you know, Tai says, you know, remember that it's survival of the most adaptable. And, you know, different things make different people happy. That's why you have to intentionally set up your experiments to find out what works for you. And, you know, the blue eyeshadow, Numb-nuts, is a quote from one of Tai's business partners named Chuck, who says, Tai, you always want to hire masters because masters get things done. And the blue eyeshadow represents someone with no experience. Chuck and Tai say, you want to hire a master because not only do masters get things done, but they're going to have a few scars and a few gray hairs that they can wear as a crown that shows that they've had some skin in the game and some good judgment through their experiences. But he has one thing to explain at the end of this. His rule is, if you ever hire someone and the first time they are no good, ditch them and hire somebody else. You're in no way obligated to give someone a second chance. And his questions at the end of this lesson are, what is an example of you mastering the wrong thing? What's a time when you trusted someone without the right experience? And what's an example where you should have moved on because they were a numbnut, but you kept them around and you became the numbnut? Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in review number 51. Take care.